My ex-wife slept with my best friend and tried to ruin my new girlfriend's life, so I taught her a lesson that wiped the smirk off her face instantly. I, 39, male. Guess the best way to explain this whole thing is to start from the beginning. Me and Malene were together for 15 years. On paper, that sounds like a long, solid marriage, right? 2 kids, decent house, bills paid, all that. But honestly, if I'm being real, it wasn't as good as I kept telling myself it was. Malene always had this temper that you couldn't ignore. She wasn't one of those people who just get annoyed and walk off. No, she'd blow up over the smallest crap. Forget to bring milk on my way home. She'd slam cabinet doors hard enough to rattle the plates. Leave a dish in the sink. Suddenly, I'm the laziest man alive, and she's raising the kids alone. I'd be standing there after a 12-hour shift at the construction site, covered in dirt and sweat, thinking, how the hell am I the useless one here? Now, enter Connor, my so-called best friend. We'd been friends since high school. He was the funny one, the smooth talker, the guy who could walk into a room and instantly have everyone's attention. Meanwhile, I've always been the quieter type. Work hard, keep my head down, provide for my family. That was my role. When Connor went through his own divorce a couple years back, he started hanging around more. I didn't mind at first. Honestly, I thought it was good. I figured maybe Malene would chill out if she had someone else to joke around with. Stupid way of thinking. But that's how my brain rationalized it at the time. Looking back now, the red flags were basically waving in my face. Malene suddenly putting on makeup just to sit on the back deck when Connor came over for a barbecue. Buying new dresses for just hanging out, laughing at every dumb joke he made like it was the funniest thing she ever heard. She'd even position herself to sit next to him when we went out. I noticed. Of course, I noticed. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I didn't want to be the jealous husband who accuses his wife of flirting with his best friend. Plus, he was the guy I vented to about her mood swings. He'd nod and say, "Man, you put up with a lot, and I thought he got it." Meanwhile, Malene kept up her pattern, picking fights over stupid things, telling me in front of the kids how I'm never home. She'd tell her friends she felt like a single mom, even though I was killing myself with overtime to keep the bills paid. I'd get home after dark, dead tired, and she'd unload on me about laundry not folded right or homework not checked. And still, I bit my tongue most of the time. I'd apologize just to shut it down and keep peace in the house. The kids, Macy and Kevin, started noticing too. Whenever Malene would get worked up, they'd retreat to their rooms. They knew better than to be around when she was in one of her moods. That killed me inside because I wanted home to feel safe for them, not like walking through a minefield. Connor being around gave her something new to focus on, but it wasn't in a good way. He'd bring little gifts for the kids, which was nice on the surface, but never once did he bring anything for me or even acknowledge that I was the one keeping everything afloat. Flowers for Malene, toys for the kids, nothing for the guy he called brother. That started bothering me. Felt like he was playing a part in my house and I was just background. From then on, the atmosphere at home got worse. Malene started staying out late after work, claiming she was helping friends or doing extra hours. She'd come back around 9 or 10, shower straight away, barely talk to me. If I asked questions, she got defensive or short with her answers. It was like she was living a separate life, and I was just an inconvenience she had to deal with. Still, I kept holding on to the idea that maybe things would turn around. Maybe she was just going through some kind of midlife funk. I know that sounds dumb, but when you've built a life with someone, you don't want to admit it's crashing. You cling to whatever scraps of normal you can find. But deep down, I knew the signs were there, and ignoring them didn't make them go away. It just made the hit harder when the truth finally slapped me in the face later on, and trust me, it did. On New Year's Eve of all nights, normally New Year's was a family thing for us. Kids go to bed a little later, maybe watch the ball drop on TV if they can stay awake. Malene makes snacks and I try to keep my eyes open after a long week, but this year she suddenly announced she was going to ring in the new year with friends. Not our friends, not family, just friends. No invite for me, no details. Just told me last minute like I was the babysitter. I didn't argue. I just said, all right, I'll be home with the kids. My gut was twisting though. Something about the way she said it, too casual, like she'd already rehearsed the line. Around 11 p.m., the kids were asleep and I was sitting on the couch flipping channels. My phone buzzed. Tom, one of my coworkers, texting me a picture, said, "Isn't this your wife?" My stomach dropped. Picture was from a bar downtown. Malene sitting way too close to Connor, hand on his arm, both grinning like teenagers. I didn't waste time second-guessing. I grabbed my jacket, locked the house, and drove. My mind wasn't racing like you'd think. It was dead calm, like I already knew what I was going to see. Sure enough, I walk into that bar a little after 11:30. Music blasting, people yelling Happy New Year. Early, balloons everywhere, and right there in the corner, booth was Malene, my wife of 15 years, sitting on Connor's lap, kissing him like she'd been doing it forever. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or flip tables. I just stood there until she noticed me. Her face went pale like she'd seen a ghost. Connor froze, trying to slide her off his lap like that would make a difference. I walked right up, looked at her dead in the eye and said, "We're done." Then I turned to Connor. "You two, you're out of my life." Malene opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. "Save it. I'm not stupid, and I'm not weak. You two made your choice. You'll live with it." I walked out before they could spin it or throw excuses. On the way home, I wasn't even shaking. I just felt like a switch flipped in me. 15 years of dealing with her explosions, her insults, her crap, I was finished. Next morning, I told Malene straight up she could move out. No negotiating, no therapy talk, no dragging it out. You wanted him? Go live with him. But the house, the kids, the life we built, you're not screwing me out of that. She tried pulling the classic guilt trip, saying I was tearing the family apart, that the kids needed both parents under one roof. I laughed in her face. You tore it apart the second you climbed into his lap, Malene. Don't act like I'm the problem now. Within 2 weeks, she packed her things and left. I made sure every step was documented. Text messages when she moved out, who she left with. My lawyer had a neat folder ready. The divorce process went smoother than I expected, mostly because she didn't contest much. Probably thought Connor was worth it. Jokes on her. The kids, man. That was the hardest part. Macy was old enough to understand something was wrong. Kevin just kept asking when Mommy was coming home. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told them Mommy made a choice and she's not living here anymore, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. They cried, but they also clung to me tighter than ever. For a while, it was just survival mode. Get up, get them to school, work, dinner, bed, over and over. I didn't crumble, though. I wasn't about to let Malene see me broken. She expected me to beg, I think, but I didn't. I let her see that I was fine without her, and honestly, that pissed her off more than anything. Meanwhile, Connor had basically vanished from my life. This was a guy who'd been like a brother to me for decades, and suddenly, he was just gone, replaced by some clown living with my ex-wife. Mutual friends told me he was bragging about how Malene finally chose happiness. Sure, dude, enjoy raising someone else's kids every other weekend. Here's the thing. I thought cutting her out would be the end of it. Divorce final, kids settled, me focusing on work. But Malene didn't like that I wasn't destroyed. She hated that I was moving forward, and she really hated that I didn't bow down to her drama. It started small at first. Random texts at midnight about how the kids missed her, showing up at my house uninvited with excuses like, I forgot Kevin's jacket, trying to chat me up like nothing happened. Each time I told her the same thing, stay in your lane, Malene. We're done. I wasn't weak anymore. I was documenting, reporting, protecting my peace. She thought she could pull me back into the chaos, but I'd already made up my mind. My kids deserved better, and honestly, so did I. And that's how it shifted from betrayal to harassment. Because a woman like Malene, she doesn't just accept losing control. She finds new ways to get under your skin. But I was ready this time. Life didn't stop just because Malene thought she still had strings attached to me. I wasn't going to sit around lonely and bitter while she played house with Connor. So, when my buddy Tom dragged me out one night, said I needed to get out of my cave, I went. That's when I met Nancy. Nancy wasn't flashy or trying to impress anyone. She was just calm. She listened when I talked, actually cared about what I said, and didn't treat me like a walking paycheck. She worked in marketing, had her own house, her own life. For once, I felt like I could breathe. The best part, the kids liked her right away. Macy bonded with her over books. Kevin thought she was funny because she played board games with him without fake enthusiasm. Nancy didn't force it. She wasn't trying to be mom too. She just treated them like real people. That meant everything to me. Of course, Malene found out. And when I say she lost her mind, I mean she went full delusional. One night, out of nowhere, she showed up at my house. No call, no text, just pounding on the door like she lived there. I opened it, and she barged past me. She went straight into the kitchen, scanning like a detective, muttering, "Where is she?" I told her flat out, "Get out, Malene. You don't live here. You don't have the right." She ignored me, spotted Nancy's coffee mug in the sink, and threw it in the trash like she was marking territory. "Don't bring random women around my kids," she snapped. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there and said, "First off, Nancy isn't random. Second, you lost the right to tell me what to do the second you climbed into Connor's lap. Leave." She tried smirking like she still had control. "You're confusing the kids. They don't need another mother." That's when I pulled my phone out, held it up, and said, "I'll call the police right now. Your choice." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frame. I didn't let it slide. I called the non-emergency number and filed a report for harassment. Paper trail started right there. But she didn't stop. A week later, Nancy stayed over on a night I had the kids. Next morning, Malene called the cops herself, claimed I was exposing her children to a dangerous stranger. 2 squad cars rolled up, Officers were professional, asked Nancy a couple basic questions, checked her ID, then looked at me like, "Really? This is what she dragged us into?" One of them even said, "Sir, unless there's actual evidence of danger, your ex has no say who you date." I filed another report. The more Malene realized she couldn't control me directly, the more she tried twisting the kids. Macy told me her mom was grilling her for details, what Nancy cooked, what games they played, if Nancy said anything bad about Mommy. Macy hated it. Kevin started stuttering when he talked about weekends with me like he was afraid of giving the wrong answer. I confronted Malene about it during a custody exchange. "Stop pumping the kids for information. It's not healthy." She crossed her arms, fake smiled, and said, "I'm just making sure they're safe." I shot back. "Safe? You leave them with a guy who thinks loyalty is optional, but you're worried about Nancy. Get real." And she didn't like that one bit. Eyes went cold, jaw tight, like I'd hit a nerve. She hissed, "You're going to regret bringing her into this." Then she got in her car and peeled off like a teenager. Thing is, I didn't regret it. I wasn't backing down. I kept documenting, filing reports, making sure there was a record every time she stepped out of line. Nancy saw it too. She told me one night, "You don't have to put up with this for me." I looked her straight in the eye and said, "No, I don't. That's why I'm not. She doesn't run my life anymore." That's when Malene started getting more creative. I'd spot her car parked a block away from Nancy's house at night. Neighbors mentioned seeing her just sitting there, lights off, engine running. Social media fake accounts started following Nancy, liking old posts from years back, like some stalker checklist. Nancy stayed calm, but I could tell it was getting to her. She never said it directly, but when you catch your girlfriend double-checking the locks every night, you know it's not nothing. I wasn't going to let Malene win by intimidation. I told Nancy, "We'll handle this. She's not above the law, and I'm not letting her think she is." Because here's the truth. Malene wasn't just angry. She was delusional. She convinced herself she still had ownership over me, over the kids, over everything in my life. She couldn't stand that I'd moved on without collapsing. And every time she pushed, I pushed back harder. But Malene didn't slow down. She ramped it up like she thought if she just screamed loud enough, the world would bend her way. I was documenting everything, reporting when I had to, keeping a paper trail, but it's like she thought rules didn't apply to her. The kids had been dealing with her questions and guilt trips for weeks. Macy was more withdrawn. Kevin was jumpy like he was waiting for something bad to happen. I decided enough was enough. We needed a break. So I planned a camping trip. Just me, Nancy, and the kids. No screens, no nonsense, just fresh air and some peace. We packed up Friday afternoon, drove out a couple hours and set up camp. The kids were excited, helping me hammer stakes, running around with flashlights once the sun went down. That first night it actually felt normal. Marshmallows, silly ghost stories, Kevin laughing so hard he spilled hot cocoa down his hoodie. For the first time in months, I saw them relaxed. Next morning, we hiked one of the easy trails. Macy collected wildflowers. Kevin was chasing after squirrels and Nancy was taking pictures. By the time we got back to the site, it was around lunch. That's when I saw her. Malene sitting at our picnic table like she was supposed to be there. Not hiking, not camping, just waiting. Hands folded on the table, eyes locked on us. My stomach dropped, but I didn't let it show. I told the kids to stay by Nancy and walked straight over. "What the hell are you doing here?" She stood up like she'd been rehearsing. "You kidnapped my children. You think you can just take them out here without telling me?" Her voice carried across the campground. Heads started turning. I kept my tone calm, but sharp. "It's my weekend. I don't need your permission. Leave." Macy grabbed Nancy's hand. Kevin ducked behind me. Malene noticed and lost it. "See, they're scared of you. You're confusing them with your side chick." She jabbed a finger at Nancy. Nancy didn't flinch. She told the kids softly, "It's okay, stay close," and started walking them toward the car. That only made Malene scream louder. "Don't you touch my children!" She lunged like she was going to grab Kevin. I blocked her with my arm. "Back up now." My voice was low but deadly serious. Other campers were coming over, phones out recording. Malene wasn't fazed. She started bawling fake tears, yelling about how I stole her babies and how Nancy was trying to replace her. A camp host showed up. Older guy with a walkie-talkie asking what was going on. Malene switched gears instantly like a switch flipped. Tears gone, voice calm but shaky. She said, "I'm just a mother. He took them without telling me. I'm so worried. Please, I just want my kids back." I pulled out the custody papers I brought just in case. "It's my weekend. She has no right to be here." The host skimmed them, nodded, and told Malene she needed to leave. She crossed her arms, sneered at me, and said, "I'm not leaving without them." That's when I stopped playing nice. I turned to the host. "Call the cops. She's trespassing, and she just tried to snatch my son." The second cops left my mouth. Malene's mask cracked. She screamed, "You'll regret this. You're poisoning them against me." Macy started crying. Kevin buried his face in Nancy's jacket. My chest was burning with anger, but I kept my ground. The host told her she had two options: leave now or deal with the sheriff when he got there. Finally, she stomped off, muttering curses, jumped in her car, and tore out of the campground. We tried salvaging the trip, but the kids were shaken. Macy kept asking, "Why was Mommy so mean?" Kevin wouldn't let go of Nancy's hand. That night when the fire died down, he whispered, "Is Mommy going to come back in the dark?" It broke me in half. We ended up packing early and heading home. When we pulled up to my place, the front door and windows were splattered with dried egg. Neighbors told me they saw Maline's car circling the block not long after she stormed out of the campground. She must have peeled out of there and hit my house before we got back. That Monday, I called my lawyer again. He didn't mince words. "You have enough. File for a restraining order now." And that's what I did. But if I thought that piece of paper would stop her, I was wrong. Maline was just getting started. The restraining order finally came through after the camping disaster. Judge didn't even hesitate once my lawyer laid out the reports, pictures, and everything Maline had pulled. She was ordered to stay 100 yards away from me, Nancy, and our homes. She couldn't call me, couldn't message me, nothing. For a second, I thought maybe that piece of paper would cool her down. Maybe she'd finally get it through her head that the marriage was over and I wasn't playing her games anymore. Yeah. No, she just switched tactics. Instead of showing up at my house screaming, she started plotting. It was a Friday. Normal custody exchange. Even with the restraining order, the court allowed a peaceful contact exception just for handoffs. So, we always met in a grocery store parking lot halfway between our places. Maline was all smiles when she walked up to get them, like she hadn't been harassing me for months, that fake everything's fine face she pulls when people are watching. She knelt down, gave Macy a hug, fussed with Kevin's jacket, and insisted on checking his backpack for school stuff. I didn't think much of it. She always nitpicked about whether I packed snacks or homework, right? What I didn't know at the time was she slipped something in there. I picked the kids back up Sunday evening like usual for our custody schedule. So, whatever she slipped in on Friday went straight into Kevin's bag when he headed to school Monday morning. Fast forward to Monday morning. I'm at work when I get a call from the school office. The tone of the secretary's voice immediately made my stomach drop. She said Kevin's backpack had been searched after another kid reported him showing something weird at recess. They found a box cutter. A damn box cutter. I left work, drove to the school, and went straight to the principal's office. Kevin was sitting there, eyes red, holding onto Macy's hand like he was drowning. He kept saying, "I didn't put it there. I didn't put it there." It broke my heart. The principal explained they had to follow policy, which meant documenting the weapon and possibly involving authorities. I told them flat out, that wasn't my son. Someone planted that. Macy looked up and whispered, "Mom checked his backpack on Friday." And it clicked. Maline. I asked the principal if I could see the bag. He handed it over. It wasn't Kevin's handwriting on the paper tucked next to the box cutter. It was Maline's. I knew that scribble anywhere. Sloppy loops, half caps, the way she writes her R's. The note was one line, "Keep this away from her." No signature, but come on, who else? I called my lawyer first, then the police, filed another report, laid it all out. Restraining order, her history, her access to the backpack during the exchange. They logged everything, took the box cutter and note as evidence. The worst part, Maline wasn't even subtle about her next move. That same night, Nancy gets a phone call at her office. The caller wouldn't give a name, but started hinting that Nancy was unsafe around children. Said something about leaving sharp things where kids could grab them. Nancy hung up, but she knew immediately who was behind it. The next day, we get a visit from CPS. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint saying Nancy was careless and endangering minors. Luckily, the investigator was professional. She came in, looked around the house, talked to the kids. Kevin straight up told her, "Mommy put the knife in my bag." Macy nodded, backing him up. The investigator asked Nancy a few questions, saw she had no connection to the backpack, and left. She told me off the record that it was obvious this was a custody weaponization case. Before leaving, she closed it as unfounded and gave me the case number. Maline had officially crossed into Crazy Town. After the investigator left, Macy sat on the couch and wouldn't look at me. I sat down next to her and asked what was wrong. She finally whispered, "If Mom keeps doing stuff like this, will we have to choose sides?" That hit harder than anything Maline had done to me. I told both kids straight up, "You never have to pick sides. You're kids, you didn't cause this, and you're not responsible for fixing it. What your mom is doing, that's her choice, not yours." Meanwhile, Nancy was holding it together better than I expected. She told me if she thinks I'm running just because she pulls stunts like this, she's wrong. Still, I could see the toll. She was double-checking locks, leaving for work early, looking over her shoulder. Malene's lies were meant to push Nancy out, but instead it was just making us more determined to fight back. My lawyer filed for an emergency modification of custody that week. He said, "This isn't harassment anymore. This is reckless endangerment, planting a weapon in a child's bag. A judge is going to take that very seriously." Malene, of course, tried to play it off. She told anyone who would listen that Nancy had planted it to frame her, told Macy she should be careful around Nancy, even had the nerve to call my mother and claim Nancy was dangerous. My mom shut her down fast. "You're the only dangerous one here, Malene." The police called me 2 days later. Said they couldn't prove yet who put the box cutter in the backpack, but they added it to the record along with the CPS visit and the anonymous complaint. The officer said, "This is a pattern. Keep documenting. It'll come back on her." I knew it already. Malene wasn't just jealous or angry anymore. She was obsessed. Obsessed with ruining me. Obsessed with destroying Nancy. Obsessed with staying in control when she'd already lost. That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to burn out on its own. Malene wasn't going to get bored and move on. She was spiraling deeper, and if someone didn't stop her, she'd drag everyone down with her. I didn't have to wait long before the cracks started showing in her little fantasy world. It wasn't me who made the first move this time. It was Viola, Connor's ex-wife. I hadn't talked to her since their divorce, and honestly, I never expected to. Out of nowhere, she called me one evening. Her voice was shaky, like she wasn't sure if she should even be talking to me. She said, "We need to meet. It's about Malene, and it's about the kids." That got my attention. We agreed to meet at a diner on the far side of town, a place Malene wouldn't randomly show up at. When I walked in, Viola looked wrecked. Dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't waste time on small talk. "Connor's been calling me," she said. "He's scared of her." Scared? That word stuck. Viola leaned in and told me everything. Malene had filled notebooks, literal notebooks, tracking Nancy's routine, when she left for work, where she shopped, who she saw. Connor told Viola that Malene would sit in her car for hours outside Nancy's office or my house. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Connor finally cracked after she threatened to accuse him of doing something inappropriate with my kids if he ever left her. That scared him enough to run straight to the cops, but it went further than that. Viola's voice cracked when she said it. She talks about making Nancy disappear. She didn't know if Malene meant driving her off or something worse, but it was enough to chill me to the bone. I sat there staring at my coffee, trying to keep my hand steady. Viola added, "She threatened Connor too. Said if he ever left her, she'd blame him for everything. Even told him she'd accuse him of being inappropriate with your kids." That was the breaking point for me. Enough was enough. I thanked Viola for coming forward and left the diner with one thought: this ends now. The next morning, I called my lawyer and the police. I laid out everything: her stalking, the box cutter, the CPS stunt, and now these threats. My lawyer said, "We're past harassment. This is criminal. File a report immediately." The detective I spoke to took me more seriously than anyone had before. Once I mentioned the journals and the threats against Nancy, his whole tone shifted. He said they'd need statements, proof if I had any. I told him about Viola and Connor. Later that week, the cops sat down with Connor. For once, he didn't try to protect Malene. He spilled everything. Told them about her late-night rants, how she'd drive circles around Nancy's block, how she'd scribble names and addresses in notebooks like she was planning something. He even handed over a recording he'd made on his phone. I'll never forget what the detective told me when he played it back. Malene's voice, cold as ice, saying, "If Nancy just wrapped her car around a tree, all our problems would be solved." Then she laughed like it was a joke. But the detective didn't think it sounded like a joke. Neither did I. That was enough for them to move. They got a warrant, searched Malene's place, and found the notebooks Viola mentioned. Piles of them. Maps of Nancy's office, notes about her daily routine, even photos taken without her knowing. That wasn't even the worst part. In her car, they found a metal baseball bat along with printouts of Nancy's schedule. The police arrested her on stalking and harassment charges. When they cuffed her, she screamed in the driveway like the whole neighborhood was against her. "He ruined my life. She stole my family. You're all jealous." She kicked at the officers, thrashing like a maniac. The kids were at school, thank God, but word spread fast in our small town. By the time I picked them up, Macy already knew. She looked at me with wide eyes and whispered, "Is Mommy going to jail?" Kevin just wanted to know if it was his fault. I told them the truth as gently as I could. "Mommy made choices that hurt people. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault." Nancy was shaken, of course, but she wasn't running. She told me if she thinks this will scare me away, she's wrong. I believed her. She'd stood by me through all of it, even when Malene dragged her through the mud. Malene was released on bail a couple days later, but the judge tightened the restraining order. Now she had to stay 500 yards away from us and was banned from any electronic contact or surveillance. calls, texts, emails, DMs, fake accounts, or tracking. In court hearings, Malene started unraveling more. She fired 2 lawyers because they wouldn't push her "I'm the victim" angle. She started representing herself, ranting at judges about conspiracies and how I'd brainwashed everyone against her. The custody evaluator recommended supervised visits only with counseling and a psych evaluation required before she could see the kids. The court ordered no contact until she completed both. She flat out refused, claiming the system was biased against mothers, so visits were suspended completely. And something incredible happened once she was cut out. My kids started to heal. Macy's stomach ache stopped. Kevin slept through the night without wetting the bed. The house felt lighter. They still asked about their mom sometimes, but it was more out of habit than hope. For me, I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't smug. I just felt like we'd been living under a storm cloud. And finally, the sun was starting to break through. But at the same time, I knew we weren't done. Trials take time, and Malene wasn't exactly the type to admit defeat. I kept my guard up. Cameras rolling at both houses, logs updated daily. Nancy's work let her work from home for a while, so she didn't have to look over her shoulder walking to her car. Every night, I'd look at the kids sleeping and think, I didn't ask for this war, but I'll fight it every step until they're safe. Malene wanted control. She wanted to own me, own the kids, dictate my life, even after she threw it away. But that version of me, the guy who let her yell, who let her walk all over him, that guy was long gone. It was going to be her downfall. The trial kicked off about 6 months after her arrest. I'd been to court before for the divorce and the restraining order, but this was a whole different atmosphere. Prosecutors had boxes of evidence. My lawyer told me straight up, this isn't a he said, she said anymore. She left a paper trail a mile long. They laid it all out. The fake calls to Nancy's job, the stalking logs, the CPS stunt, the box cutter planted in Kevin's backpack, the photos she took from her car, the notebooks, then the kicker. The recording Connor had made where she wished Nancy would crash her car and talked about how easy it would be to help that along. I sat there, jaw clenched, while they played her voice over the speakers. The jury didn't need to see my reaction. They needed to hear her, cold, calculated, laughing. Connor testified too. I didn't feel bad for him, but I'll admit, he finally did the right thing. He told the court how she threatened to blame him for stalking if he left her, and how she'd even threatened to accuse him of touching my kids. Watching him sweat on the stand, I knew his life was wrecked either way. Viola backed him up. She told them how Malene had confessed pieces of her obsession, how she'd been scared Malene would actually hurt someone. The prosecution also brought out the baseball bat they found in Malene's car, along with a printed map of Nancy's office. They connected it with notes in her handwriting circling entrances and parking lots. It was stomach-turning. Malene's defense was pathetic. She fired 2 court-appointed lawyers before deciding to represent herself. Every time she opened her mouth, she dug the hole deeper. She yelled about conspiracies, claimed I'd bribed Connor and Viola to lie, said Nancy had seduced me into framing her. The judge had to warn her multiple times to keep it professional. The kids didn't testify, thank God, but their school counselor did. She told the court about Kevin's nightmares and Macy's anxiety, how it lined up with Malene's escalating behavior. That hit hard with the jury. After 2 weeks, the jury came back with guilty verdicts on multiple charges: stalking, harassment, and endangerment. The sentencing was quick: 18 months in jail, 3 years probation, mandatory psych evaluation, and anger management before she could even think about custody again. On top of that, the judge extended the no-contact order through her probation. So even after she gets out, she can't come near us. When the judge read it, Malene snapped. She stood up, screaming at me across the courtroom. "You ruined my life. This is all Nancy's fault. I'll never forgive you." Bailiffs had to drag her out while she kicked and fought. That was the last time I saw her in person. For the kids, the fallout was mixed. Macy was old enough to understand her mom was in real trouble. She asked straight up, "Will she ever get better?" I told her, "That's on her. It's not on us." Kevin just wanted to know if Mommy would be back before his next birthday. That one stung, but I stayed honest. She needs help first. Until then, you're safe here. They've been adjusting better than I expected. No more stomach aches. No more bedwetting. They laugh again. Macy talks about friends and school projects, without that heavy silence hanging over her. Kevin actually sleeps through the night. Nancy's been solid through all of it. She never once gave me an ultimatum, never hinted she couldn't handle it. She helped me file reports, sat with the kids when they cried, and stood up to Malene's lies without flinching. Moving in together felt like the natural next step. As for Malene, she's sitting in a cell. 18 months doesn't sound like much, but honestly, it's not the number that matters. It's the fact she lost. She wanted control. She wanted to break me. She wanted to scare Nancy off. Instead, she ended up with nothing. No kids, no partner, no freedom. Just the consequences she earned. I keep the paperwork, the police reports, The custody modifications, all in one binder. People think that's paranoid, but I know better. When Malene gets out, I don't expect her to magically turn into a normal person. If she slips up even once, I'll have the proof ready. Some relatives have tried nudging me about forgiveness, saying, "The kids need their mom." I shut that down quick. Forgiveness doesn't mean handing her the keys to mess us up again. If she ever gets real help, maybe supervised visits someday. But until then, she stays where she belongs. On the outside, she thought she'd control me forever. Instead, she lost everything.